In the beginning there was the 3 Series, and BMW thought, let's make something else. So they took the 3 Series and made the 4, making a coupe style which was really nice. And then they made it an M car, the M4 Coupe. And this is what I'm looking at today.
One of the favourite things about this is obviously the lights. You get the angel eye lights there, and they are quite spectacular while you're driving along. Certainly one of the better daytime running lights that you can actually find these days. But also, when you start getting down to here, all these sections here, carbon fibre. And it suits the car. It's just that extra definition there. Obviously, the whole thing comes around in the styling, onto the grille, slightly different from the standard BMW grille. You've got more matte and just plain black rather than bits of chrome in there. Just really sets the car off nicely. But moving around, we get the styling that's different from the standard BMWs and has the extra parts in there, all for airflow. It's well thought out. But the thing is, it doesn't do anything to diminish any styling. But on this particular one, there's 2 things that are really the favourite things for me. Obviously, you have the standard side skirts of the car, but look at them wheels. Just look at them. Absolutely stunning. It's almost, I mean, if there was any less wheel there, they'd be floating. Look at the size of those brake discs. Absolutely massive. I've seen car wheels smaller than those. But they're absolutely necessary for keeping that power sat in that front bonnet under control.
Up front is the mainstay of the BMW M3 and M4 series, the 3-litre straight-six twin-turbo engine, which has been given a bit of a tune and a kick by the M engineers at BMW, meaning this is a bit more powerful than the standard 4 series. To illustrate, this is 1 horsepower. The car behind is 425 of those, so you're able to make a bit of noise. But there's another part of the car I really like as well.
The carbon fibre roof. It doesn't stand out so much on this one as it would on, say, a white or a blue, but it's there. It's absolutely spot on for the car. And that carbon fibre flows right the way from the beginning, across the top here, but also this part, the lip spoiler. Trust me, you really don't want to drive an M4 without one. And then we're at the business end of the car. Carbon fibre diffuser, or dual twin exhausts. Just look. Now it's purring at a really nice, gentle rhythm. Stick your foot down, that changes entirely.
But enough about the outside. Let's have a look at what the interior's like. On the inside, just as with the outside, the M4 is just the same as the 4 series, but it does additional little touches. So things like you've got your carbon fibre, you have the M badge on the actual display, you have the M badge On the steering wheel, you have it on the gear lever. It's also in the seats, but it's subtle. It's also on the kick plates as well. Subtle, not overboard. Red leather seats, you can see they're actually not that bad. I'm not a fan of red interiors per se, but it's nicely contrasted with the black setup of the rest of the cabin, which kind of offsets the seats and makes it actually quite a nice environment. Back seats is 2 with the centre console as well. The thing around the interior styling though is the attention to detail. There's as much attention to the interior detail as there is to every other detail of the car. The stitching is all perfect. You've got the actual colouring for the M series in the stitching on the steering wheel. It's all right there. Console display, really clear. You've got obviously your fuel, mileage, what miles per hour you're doing, your rev counter, your water temperature, and when you actually fire the whole car up, you've got other details as well, which you can bring up on the central display. So everything you need is well within reach. It's perfectly designed around the driver, right down to the actual controls as well, for turning things like traction control off, adjusting your suspension, your steering and the handling of the car. It's all right there, just within reach. Absolutely love the dial control for the infotainment system. And if you've seen the BMW special that we did, you'll see that we went through a lot of the interior things. We did a lot of comparisons between the M3, the M4, and of course the M convertible as well. And it hasn't changed. It's still as good now as it was back then. And yeah, I really do like them. It's one of those cars, you've got the options to tone it down, you can drive along quite nicely. The 6-cylinder engine up at the front will just basically sit there quite happily and let you tootle along. But when you want to get that extra bit out of it and get the noise, touch of a button, you're right there. Suddenly it becomes a lot more of a car. The suspension and steering tighten up, the power's right there, and the whole response of the car is completely different depending on which setting you like. Ideal for the saga lout, the older generation that still has that little bit of a rebellious streak in there just under their right foot. With this being effectively the auto box with the flappy paddles as well, so semi-auto, you've got that extra control over the way the car's going to go through the gears. You can decide to drop down a gear, stick your foot down and let that exhaust burble. Let's face it, that is a bit addictive. If you like to do that, you're going to watch your fuel disappear like there's no tomorrow. So just be aware on that one. Plus, there might be a few neighbours who don't like the noise. But let's face it, if they don't like the noise, they've got no taste in cars. You shouldn't have them as neighbours. What have we got in here? Well, we do have the nice cubby holes. We have more cubby holes, cup holders at the front, and a nice little sort of ashtray area by the obligatory 12-volt power socket that we have these days. Don't call it a cigarette lighter, and we don't get the cigarette lighter as a standard. It's always an optional pack. You always get the plastic. Air conditioning units we've covered before. Really comprehensive options on there. And of course the actual infotainment system for the buttons. You've got the CD slot for CDs, and you've also got the actual infotainment display. Absolutely love the satellite navigation system. Quite clear on the display, it shows you exactly where you are. Not a problem with it at all. And of course the controls make it easy to actually use. The big things for me on this car are just how comfortable it is, especially on roads like this one in Kirklees. Stick it into sport mode, you're going to grind your spine to dust. However, if it's in comfort mode, it's not quite so bad. It's a lot firmer than a lot of cars that I'm used to, but it's not to the point where it's uncomfortable. And the seats do actually help hold you in place and cope well with the road conditions. A lot of people will find things like the steering wheel are a little bit small for them. This, to me, it is a bit small for the size of the car, but for me, it's actually perfect in terms of being able to handle things and at least keep control of the vehicle. It's actually quite a nice size. It's quite a nice feel to it. I can't find anything to complain about, to be fair. Last but not least, well, we've heard the sound. We know what these sound like. Yes, you've got that ridiculous ability to get from 0 to 60 in a ridiculously quick time. Yes, you've got the rear wheel drive. And yes, you've got all the little bits to help control that rear wheel. But the key thing, which you really, really need, and it doesn't really seem that big a deal, you can just about see it, I can just about see it in the wing mirror, is that rear spoiler. That little rear lip spoiler. That just gives that extra bit of downforce onto those back wheels, and it really is an important part of the car. I've seen people who've had them and thought to themselves, I'll take it off, don't really need it. That's when you're going to wind up in a ditch. Without that, this car cannot put its actual power down effectively. It needs that little bit of extra push down at the back to make sure that those wheels keep contact when you need them. But they've done well to integrate it into the overall styling of the car. I love the coupe look. Maybe, I've said before, maybe I'd like the 4-door, the 5-door Grand Coupe, but this particular car, the M4, really does make me warm to the whole idea of a 2-door coupe. Even if you can only get 2 people in the back. Ideally for me, I'd like 3, just for that awkward time when you've got 5 of you, but most of the time it would suit me just fine. I cannot find any actual reason not to have one of these, apart from maybe the fact I can't afford one, which is a shame. But if I could, I'd love to have one of these. It really is nice.